Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learn a Trade. My name is Kevin Tate. Today, I will be presenting a Jong Duke video on their Virtu 90 series machine. This training is a full training on the Virtu 90 series unit, and I feel it'll be helpful to you all who may be interested in working on some of the Jong Duke equipment. So hopefully this video is helpful. Let me know in comments. Please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you very much.
Hi, welcome to Jong Duke Tech Support. My name is Jeff Rhodes. We're going to be going through a training video on the Virtu 90 series to show you how to use, maintain, and troubleshoot the machine out in the field. This model here that we have is a 9236. We're going to show you what those numbers mean in the name. So when we go ahead and open the machine door, a 90 series is going to be the size of the machine, so this is our large format machine. And then we have an 80 series, which is going to be a smaller format. The 2 for 92 is going to mean we have 2 bean canisters in the machine. The 3, so 9230, is going to mean we have 3 outputs. So we have a coax, brew chamber, and then we have 2 mixer bowls, so that's a total of 3 outputs. And then the 6, so 9236, is going to mean how many canisters we have in the machine. So here we have 2 bean canisters, we have 3 powder canisters, we have a 6th canister for ground coffee, our 9236 model. We're going to go over the touch screen and when you're in screensaver mode, you should have an option that says touch screen to continue. So you just touch anywhere on the screen and that brings you into the menu screen. Here we've got our menu options. We've got 6 categories as well as a carafe option on the bottom, as well as a number selection choice. When we go into our coffee menu, we'll see that we have 6 more drink options in here, and then we can exit, cancel out. So we have 6 choices, 36 drink choices that we can have on the Virtu, as well as we have 6 more down here for the carafe option. When we go into our select, we'll get our, which increases the grounds or the powder amounts that you put into the drink. And then if you click on the milk option for a coffee, you'll get a little shot of milk into the drink before the coffee goes in. And then we can turn it down, we can turn those numbers up. And then if you notice, the start button's not lit up, so none of these drinks will run until we put a cup underneath the cup stand. And then once we put a cup there, then our start button lights up and we can go ahead and run that drink. In our coffee menu, we have a light coffee, which is going to be your left bean canister. We have a dark coffee, which is going to be in your right bean canister. And then we'll have a decaf coffee, which will be the ground coffee canister in the door. And then to the right of that, you'll see 6 or 3 more options. You'll have an extra strength version of each of these drinks, and what those mean is you're going to get a double puck of coffee. So on the single version, you'll have a light coffee with 1 puck, and then if you go to the extra strength, you'll have a double puck, which will give you a stronger cup of coffee. And then on our espresso menu, we've got 2 different options. We've got a single, double, and triple espresso from our first bean canister, and then our single, double, triple espresso from the second bean canister. Lattes and cappuccinos. So again, we'll have a single, double, and a triple cappuccino, as well as a single, double, and triple latte. And all of these drinks are pulling from the second bean canister. And then we have our flavored drinks. So we have French vanilla drinks as well as chocolate drinks. So we have just a straight French vanilla. We'll have our vanilla with milk. We'll have espresso with vanilla, our cafe vanilla, vanilla cappuccino, and a vanilla latte. And then if we go to the chocolate drinks, we'll have the same options in there as well. And then at the end, under our flavor shots menu, you can just get a 2-ounce shot of milk, vanilla or chocolate, as well as single shots of your espresso out of your first and second bean canister. And then to the right of that, we have our hot water option. And this is for getting hot water into your cup for oatmeal or tea. And on the dual dispense machines, the hot water comes out of the right cup stand only, and all the other drinks come out of the left cup stand. And on a center dispense machine, obviously everything would come out of the center cup stand. And then down at the bottom, we talked about our carafe or jug option down here. So these basically run multiple versions of coffees to give you a 30 to 40 ounce either carafe or jug of coffee or hot water. And then the travel mug options are more of a double cycle, but double shot of your drink, so that gives you more into a large travel mug. And the last thing down here on the bottom, we have number selection. And what this is used for when you run a coffee or any of your drinks, when you're looking at the screen, it'll actually give you a number. And you can go in and push that number into the number selection option, and it will run that exact same drink for you. So that's our menu, the drink menus. So this is the 9236 with the dual dispense. We also have a center dispense model, which will have a single cup stand right in the middle. So on the dual dispense, we have 2 cup stands. There's LED lights behind each cup stand that light up the cup stand itself. If we want to remove the cup stands to clean them, we can just pry the pieces apart, and they will come right off of the connector block on the door. And then we can actually separate this inner part and clean it up if it gets too dirty, and then snap it back together when we're done. And then they just, again, these outer clips go on stand like that. We also have a couple of cup sensors which are located underneath this chrome piece right here. So there will be 2 LED lights that are coming out of here, and then 2 LED stand, and when you put a cup in there, it'll break the plane and detect when that cup has been placed. If you want to run a carafe or a travel mug, you can lift the cup stand up, and then you can place your carafe or travel mug underneath the outlet. We have a drip tray grid that's underneath the cup stands that can be removed and again cleaned. So if this gets dirty, we can take that off and clean it. We have drip tray guides on the left and right side. Be careful of these because they can get broken very easily. Do not use them as a handle. Do not grab a hold of them and try to lift the machine that way. And also be careful when you tip the machine forward that you don't break these off. And then we have our drip tray, which is underneath the machine, and that can be removed by pulling it out. So once we have the door open, we'll be able to see our drip tray sensor underneath. We have 2 metal pieces on the left-hand side, and they will make contact with the silver clip on the left side of the drip tray. Tab hanging down into the tray, that's for detecting when the tray is full of water. And what you'll get on the screen will be a drip tray or waste bucket full error message when the drip tray or waste bucket is full. Be careful as you pull the tray out that you don't bend or snap off this water sensor. We also have another sensor underneath the coax brewer. So if we pull out our waste buckets, you'll see on the left hand side here we have also a water sensor. And again, when the inner container gets full of water, it'll come up and touch the two leads on here, and it'll give you a drip tray or waste bucket full error message as well. So if you see drip tray or waste bucket full, that means either your bucket underneath the coax brewer is full of water or your drip tray underneath the machine is full of water. And at that point you should empty all of the buckets. The other item we have in here is the grounds bucket. And this, as this is inside the machine, as coffee comes off the coax brewer, it'll fall into the grounds bucket, and it's based on a counter system. So it counts how many pucks of coffee out of the coax, and when it gets to a certain number, it will tell you to empty your waste bucket or empty your grounds bucket. So once you get that empty grounds bucket error message on the screen, then you can go ahead and pull the grounds bucket out, dump it out, and then replace it or clean it and put it back into the machine along with your water bucket. As you slide these back into the machine, you want to be careful to make sure you lift up on the sensor and make sure it slides into the water bucket wall, and it won't actually make contact with the water when the water bucket gets full. Grounds bucket, you'll notice there's a white micro switch in the back here. So when the grounds bucket's installed, this switch is in the up position, which indicates to the machine that the grounds bucket's installed in the machine. When you remove it, this switch releases, and within after 4 seconds, it will reset the counter back to 0. Anytime you pull the grounds bucket out, you want to make sure that you dump it before you put it back into the machine. Otherwise, it could actually overflow the grounds bucket. So on the left-hand side, we'll see where the water comes from that goes into the water bucket underneath the coax. So one place it will come out of is the coax brewer itself. Anytime you run a rinse cycle or a weekly cleaning cycle, there'll be water inside the brew chamber, and as the piston comes up, it'll push that water out and it'll drain out the side into the water bucket. And then we've got 3 overflow outlets right here. So the one on the right hand side is going to be the overflow for our open boiler tank. When that tank gets too full, it'll come out the top of the tank and go out this overflow right here. The one in the middle is the overflow for the pressure boiler. So it also, water comes out of here at the end of the drink cycle. So when you run a coffee or an espresso, at the end of the cycle, the pressure will release out of the coax brewer, and it will come out this middle outlet right here. And then the one on the left hand side is a connected to a metal plate underneath the open boiler, and if any water were to collect or leak out of the boiler, it'll collect on that plate and it'll drain down and come out this left hand side. For troubleshooting purposes, if you see water coming out of the right hand side, it could be a level sensor that needs to be replaced, or it could be a loose ground wire, or possibly an inlet valve that's stuck open. The one in the middle Could be same thing, could be a level sensor in the pressure boiler tank that's stuck or that's not working properly, and then also could be an inlet valve failure as well. And when you're running a drink, if you see water coming out of the center as you're running the drink, then it could be a valve behind the brew chamber that's stuck open. And one on the left hand side, really don't see much, I shouldn't see much coming out of there at all. So before you do your daily cleaning cycle, you want to make sure you put a container underneath the outlet. This is where the water will come out when it's running through the mixer bowls and the coax brewer. So now we're going to go over the daily cleaning and filling instructions on the Virtu. Key to unlock and open the door. And now we can get into removing the canisters and going through the daily cleaning routine. The machine needs to be cleaned on a daily basis. The canister should be filled up, and then there's a daily rinse cycle that we run at the end. First thing we're going to do is remove our canisters to fill them. So we can open the lid on the top, and then we'll go ahead and start removing the canisters. So we'll start with the bean canisters. There's a green lever that we pull out, and we pull that all the way out, and it'll lock the beans into the canister, and then we can basically lift up from the bottom with our hand on the back to steady it, and then we can pull our bean canister out of the machine. And we'll do the same thing with canister 2. Pull the lever all the way out, lift up on the bean canister, pull it out of the machine. And then to remove the powder canisters, we can go ahead and lift up on the front, and as we pull forward, we're going to turn the funnels in the up position so that the product doesn't fall out of the funnel. And then we can slide the canister out of the machine. So that was our chocolate canister, our milk topping canister. We'll rotate the funnel all the way up, pull that out. And then our last one is our vanilla canister. So we'll pull that forward, rotate the funnel all the way up, and then we can pull that canister out as well. Once we have all the canisters out, let's go ahead and do a little sweep. So we'll take just a regular paintbrush, and then we can sweep any powder that would collect underneath the powder canisters. And then we can sweep around the coax brewer, and then sweep down the sides of the cabinet into our waste buckets underneath, and then we can empty those out when we're done with the cleaning. So to fill your canisters up, you're going to want to put them on a counter and keeping them out of the machine so the product doesn't fall into the machine or fall into your mixer bowls. To fill the bean canisters, you're going to lift the lid, and then you can pour your beans into the bean canister, and then put the lid back on. Same thing with the second bean canister. And then for the powder canisters, you just remove the white lid, and again you fill these outside of the machine so the powder and the dust doesn't get into the machine, and it'll keep it cleaner that way. And then once you're done, just put the lid back on, and then you can go ahead and reinsert your canisters into the machine. Okay, so once we have our canisters filled, then we can go ahead and put them back into the Virtu. So we always have to start with the right hand side first. So that's going to be our vanilla canister. So we'll slide our vanilla canister back in, and once the canister's in, we can rotate the funnel down into the mixer bowl. As we rotate the funnel down with a full canister, we're going to see some powder drop into the mixer bowls. We will clear that out later on when we run the daily rinse cycle. Next canister we'll put in is the milk topping canister. We'll go ahead and rotate that funnel back down. And then our last canister, powder canister, is going to be the chocolate canister. And again, make sure we get our funnels into the mixer bowls. Once we get our powder canisters in, we'll go ahead and put our bean canisters back in. So we'll start with the right side bean canister. This can be done in any order. We slide the canister down on top of the posts, and then once they're seated on the post, we can go ahead and push the green lever back in, and that'll lock the canister onto the grinder housing, and it'll release the beans into the grinder. And then we'll go ahead and put our other bean canister on. And then once that canister is seated, go ahead and push our green lever back in. And now we've got our canisters back in the Virtu. Once you've closed the door, we'll go ahead and run our daily rinse cycle. So that's the button up here on the top that says rinse. And then we go ahead and hit the button. So the rinse cycle is rinsing your 2 mixer bowls out, as well as rinsing your brew chamber out with hot water. It usually takes less than a minute to run and runs about 16 ounces of water or less. Once your rinse cycle is finished, all you have to do is hit the quit button on the top and then hit close door, press here to quit service, and that'll take you back to your main drink recipe. Once we've removed all the canisters and we've done our daily cleaning on the machine, now we're going to move on to the weekly cleaning. We start with removing the outlet, and then we're going to go ahead and remove the coax brewer. We're going to lift up on the green lever, and then we pull forward. And that releases the coax brewer from the back plate. And then we can take the brewer to the sink. We can rinse out the inside of the brew chamber. We can rinse it, basically everything on the brew chamber can be rinsed off with hot water. We'll turn it around and rinse underneath the machine, underneath the brew chamber, and then we can go ahead and put that aside. Once we've got the coax brewer rinsed and cleaned off, then we'll move on to our mixer. We're going to go ahead and take the mixer plate, which is this green item at the bottom. We're going to rotate it down up on top of the mixer bowl, and we'll pull and then once we have the mixer bowl removed, we can go ahead and disconnect the outlet for the mixer bowl. So again, we're going to take the mixer bowls to this. We're going to clean in here, and we're going to rinse water through the tubing to make sure that the tubing is clear. And we'll go ahead and remove the other mixer bowl. Hold our hand up here of the mixer bowl, pull it out of the sink, and wash them out. Once we have our mixer bowls removed, then we can go ahead and remove the whipper blade, mixer blade, and the mixer plate. So to take the mixer blade off, just put our fingers on either side and we'll pull out away from the shaft, and the mixer blade will come off. We can check it for damage, we can clean it, make sure that the bar is intact, make sure there's no scoring on the inside or the outside of the mixer blade, and if it's in good shape we can go ahead and reuse it. If not, we would put a new one on. To take the mixer plate off, we'll go ahead and rotate it a little farther, and then again that will pull forward and slide off the mixer shaft. And then this we want to also flip around to the back side, and we're going to look for product back here. If we start to see product building up back here, then it's time to put in a new whipper seal, which is this green seal on the inside of the mixer plate. All right, make sure that's not getting material back here, and then if it is, go ahead and put a new whipper seal in. We have another O-ring on here. Make sure this doesn't get lost. It's orange, and that's to seal the mixer plate to the mixer bowl. That can also be taken out and cleaned and put back in. That's our mixer plate. We'll go ahead and remove the other one. So take our mixer blade off, remove our other mixer plate. Again, turn it around, make sure there's no product back there, and clean that off. So once we have the mixer plates off, now we can look at the mixer shaft. Again, there's can be product building up on here. Chocolate and vanilla milk powder can build up on the shaft. So we'd want to take a rag and hot water, and then basically just make sure we clean this off so there's no product on here, so it's nice and smooth. And then when we put these back together, if we have a little bit of food grade grease, we use a Molly coat here. You can put a little bit of that on the shaft, and that'll help lubricate the whipper seal when you go to put your mixer plate back on. Once you've got those cleaned up, the last thing you want to do here is remove this screen that's here. So this is filtering product to keep it away from the fan. Behind it is a fan, pulls moisture and heat out of the mixer bowls, and as it's pulling the moisture out, it's going to pull a little bit of product through there, and you're going to start to see buildup of chocolate or vanilla inside of these two holes. Clean this off. We're going to take this top plate off, and then inside you'll see we have a piece of foam in here that can be taken to the sink, soaked in hot water, clean it off, and then we'll dry it off, or have an extra one handy that you can put in, and then you'll put it back in when it's cleaned and dried. Put the lid back on, and then we can go ahead and start putting things back together. So once we start by putting this back in, we'll go ahead and put our mixer plates back on. So slide them on to the shaft after you put some food grade grease or lubricant on there. Go ahead and put the other one on. And then when we go to put the mixer blades back on, we want to make sure we'll line up this. There's an arrow on the front side of the mixer blade, and that will correspond and line up to a flat spot on the shaft. So we can go ahead and line those up, and once we get them on, we'll push them on, make sure they click on into place, and then we'll give it a slight tug, make sure it doesn't come off. Same thing with the other one. Line up the arrow with the flat spot on the mixer shaft and push it in, and then we can give it a little tug, make sure it's on all the way. We don't want to push it on too far that we break this plastic tab off, and we don't want to put it on short so that it rubs against the mixer bowl. Once our mixer bowls have been cleaned, we can go ahead and reattach those. So we're going to slide the mixer bowl in. We're going to line up all the connections on the bottom of the mixer bowl. we're going to line up the outlet here and our water inlet, put all that together, and then we're going to rotate this up to lock the bottom of the mixer bowl back in. And same thing with the first mixer bowl. So again, we're assembling these right to left. It'll be easier to put them back together that way. So again, I slide that on, rotate the green lever back up, and then we'll go ahead and reattach our outlets. And once we get those put back together, we can go ahead and put our clean coax brewer back in. We'll go ahead and set this on the 2 feet, and then we'll slide it in. And then we'll go ahead and reconnect the outlet, and then we can continue on with our weekly cleaning cycle. So when you have your coax brewer out of the machine, we can take a look at a few things. If we look at the outlet, we can remove that by pulling it off. And then when we actually run this, if we were to run it with coffee in the machine, we can see that there is going to be 2 outlets here. The left-hand outlet is going to be our espresso, and then the right-hand outlet is where the coffee will come out. What controls that is what we call the upper piston or filter head. And to remove that, we can rotate this gray fixation knob and unlock this little tab down here at the bottom, and that will release our filter head or upper piston. So here we have our upper piston or filter head removed from the coax brewer, and we can show you how this works. We have a orange O-ring that seals the upper piston to the coax brewer to keep the water from leaking out. So you want to make sure that's connected onto the upper piston. And then on the opposite side, we have a stainless steel screen that keeps the espresso coffee out of the coffee grounds out of the cup. To remove this, we can take off these 2 screws. And then once we have these screws off, we're going to find underneath this, we have it's called a switch, and underneath the switch we have a spring. And the way this operates is when you go to run a coffee, there's not enough pressure to close the switch so it stays open, and all the coffee is going to run underneath the lip, and it's going to go into this larger hole right here on the upper piston. And then when we go to run an espresso, the switch will close and force all the coffee to go through the tiny hole in the middle here, and that corresponds to this small 0.3 millimeter hole in the center of the upper piston. What can happen with that is it can get plugged up with coffee oils, and you won't get any espresso coming out into your cup anymore. So what you have to do is take this tool that we sell. It has a steel lead instead of a pencil lead on it, and it's the size of the tiny hole for your espresso, and you can run the lead through there and clean out the oils or coffee grounds that are in there. And now when you go put this back together, your espresso will go through that tiny hole. The other parts we have here, we have a stainless steel screen. Every once in a while you're going to want to take this and hold it up to the light to make sure that there's light coming through, it's not plugged up. And then there's a Mylar seal that's connected, and this seal only goes one direction, so when you take it apart, make sure you keep the V-taper facing the brew chamber. If we reverse it, turn it the other direction, then we're going to get a leak coming out of the coax brew chamber. So to put these back together, we'll go ahead and set our screen assembly on the top, set in our 2 screws. And now we have it back together, and we can go ahead and reinsert it into the coax brew chamber. And then if we need to put it back in, we can go ahead and reinsert it like that, and then we'll go ahead and relock it. And we want to make sure that the 2 indentations in the fixation knob are lined up with the tab. If we need to take the sweeper arm off, which is this piece right here, this sweeps the coffee grounds off, as well as the puck when it comes out of the brew chamber. We can just pry on the back side here, we can pry the arm up, and then we can remove that if we need to clean it. And then make sure you want to reinstall it, put it back on. It goes like that. And then this lower, what we call the lower piston assembly, we have a video on our website that you can go to and watch that will show you how to remove this lower piston assembly and how to remove the piston out of the cylinder as well. So the way this works is when it's in the machine, it's in there like this, which is home position. So that means the arm is back, and then our piston is towards the bottom of the cylinder. And when it's in the machine, it's going to sit like this. We're going to run coffee grounds into the brew chamber. Once the brew chamber is full, then the brewer motor is going to rotate the knob on the back, and it's going to close the brew chamber and seal it. So once the brew chamber is sealed, then it's going to start the pumps, and we're going to run water into our inlet, which goes into the bottom of the piston, up through the coffee grounds, out through our upper piston assembly, and then if it's an espresso, we're going to get espresso out of the left-hand side. If it's coffee, we'll get coffee out of the right-hand side. When the drink is done, then again the brewer motor is going to open the brew chamber up, and when it opens up, it's going to push the piston all the way to the top. There'll be a coffee puck sitting on here. It'll sweep the puck into the waste bin. It'll rotate the piston back down, and then it'll open back up to home position with the piston down, and it'll be ready for another cup of coffee or espresso. So when we remove the coax brewer out of the machine, we have a plastic plate that the brewer mounts to. This piece right here is what holds the brewer to the plate. And this is what we call the water inlet. And this is where the water comes into the coax brew chamber. On the tip of this inlet, there is a O-ring, and you're going to want to make sure that you have some kind of food grade grease or moly coat to put around that. As that dries out, it's harder for the brew chamber to push and lock back in here, so you want to make sure you have some lubricant or food grade grease along with you. Down here, this is the coax brewer motor, and then just to the right of that is what we call the micro switch. And this switch right here, when it goes in and out, it detects where the brew chamber is in its rotation, and if it's not in its proper spot, then the home switch, the micro switch, will send an error to the screen saying brewer not in home position, and at that point you'll have to get back here and see why the brew chamber is not rehoming itself. And then mounting the plate onto the cabinet, we have these 4 screws here. So if we ever need to remove this plate, we would remove these 4 screws, and then we can pull the plate out after disconnecting the wiring in the back as well as the water lines as well. So once we have our coax brewer back in, we'll go ahead and put our canisters back in the machine. So again, starting right to left. Now we have all our canister back in. We're going to want to run a daily rinse cycle to rinse our mixer bowls out, because when we drop our funnels down, we're going to have powder dropping into the bowls. So we'll run a daily rinse first. Once our daily rinse cycle is done, then we'll move on to the weekly cleaning cycle. So the weekly cleaning cycle uses these cleaning tablets. And then we're going to take one of these cleaning tablets, drop it into our coax brewer. And then we can go ahead and close the door. So after you place your tablet in the coax brewer and close the door, you're going to want to come to the service menu and hit your weekly cleaning cycle. And then once you click on that, you'll see it has instructions as to what to do. So place tablet in brewer, which we've done, close the door, or put your service key in, place a 1 liter jug under the outlet. Be careful because there's hot water coming out. And then we're going to press here to start the cleaning cycle. So this cleaning cycle is an 8-minute long cleaning cycle. You're going to want to let it run all the way through. And then when it's done in 8 minutes, we can go ahead and exit back out to the drink menu. So once your weekly cleaning cycle finishes, then you'll get back to the service menu. You can either just leave it like this and it'll reset itself back to the drink menu, or you can again hit quit and close the door to exit service menu. And now you're back out to the drink recipes. So now we're going to talk about the open boiler system in the Virtu 90. The Virtu 90 has a dual boiler system. We have a 1 gallon open boiler in the front of the machine that feeds water into our mixer bowls and feeds water to the hot water outlet on the machine. And then we have a 12-ounce pressure boiler that's located in the back of the machine, and that feeds water into the coax brew chamber for coffee and espresso. So to get at the open boiler, we will get at it through the front of the machine. First thing we do is remove our 3 powder canisters, remove our 2 bean canisters, and then it gives us access to this back plate. To remove the back plate, there's a screw in the upper right hand corner, and then there's another screw, second screw in the upper left hand corner. We remove those 2 screws, and then we're going to remove the plate. Back plate. So we'll go ahead and lean that plate forward, and then we can put our powder motors are. Just kind of turn the plate at an angle, pull it out of the machine. And now we can get at our open boiler. Open boiler assembly. left to right. So on the left hand side, these are our heating elements. Again, anytime you're accessing this area, you want to make sure the power is turned off. So you mount it in between. What will happen with this is if the tank doesn't fill up with water but it still overheats, it'll pop a button out here. You have to go in and remove a connector, push the button back in, then you can reconnect it and restart and see if the heating element's heating back up. So these click-ons, they shut the power down to the heating element so they don't overheat. And then to the right of that, the first thing we'll come to in the front is the temperature sensor. And that looks like that. So these just pull straight out of these silicone grommets so they can be cleaned off or replaced if they're no good anymore. And then to the right of that or behind it, we have our level sensor. Looks like that. And again, when the water comes up and touches the sensor, it tells the machine that it's full. The water turns off, and then at that point it goes to the temperature sensor and determines the temperature of the water. And if it's not hot enough, it'll tell the heating element to go ahead and turn on, heat the water up, and then when it gets up to the correct temperature, the temperature sensor will tell it to shut the heating element off. To the right of that, we have our water inlet. So this stainless steel piece we can see is connected to our inlet valve in the back of the machine. So our water comes in to our inlet valve. It'll go either to the open boiler or go to the pressure boiler or open boiler. This is the open boiler fill tube, and it'll go all the way up into the tank. If the tank overflows or overfills, then it'll go out the overflow tube here, and attached to that we have what we call a high limit click-on as well. So if the water in the tank is above 230 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll come out. If it's too hot, it'll push this red button out and it'll shut the heating element off. So if you have a boiler that's not heating up, the first thing you're going to want to check is this high limit click-on. This one usually trips before the one on top of the tank does. And that's our overflow tube. So this tube will end up being connected to the right hand overflow that's down underneath the coax brewer. And then on the right hand side we have our what we call dump valves or open boiler valves. We can remove these after we've taken the wiring off and disconnected the tubing from the bottom. These things will just rotate back and forth and you can pull them out from the side of the machine. And then if we need to take these apart, we can remove these what we call dog bones or barbells, and then we can disassemble and clean the valves. What can happen with these valves is they can get scale build up inside of them, and what we have to do is take them out and then we have to take them apart. So we can just, this is the single valve. We can go ahead and remove again these little what we call barbells, and we're basically separating the solenoid from the lower part of the valve. Once I've got the barbells removed, I can go ahead and take our air tube, and then once I pull this apart, you'll see inside we've got a silicone plunger, and that seals or will sit down on the white seat that's right there, and that's what holds the water in. And then when it's time to release water, this plunger will open up, let the water out, and then when it's done it'll close, and that'll seal the valve. So what happens is you can get some scale buildup around this end or around the end down here, and you have to go in there and clean that off, put it back together, and see if that takes care of it. You can also replace these parts right here. You can buy the seal, the silicone plunger, and on the double valve you can buy these seals right here, as well as the plungers inside, and these dog bones as well. On a Virtu, if you get a grinder block, what can happen is on the front screen you could see a grinder block 1 or grinder block 2 error message, or you'll see an error message in the error log. And to clear the grinder block, if it's a grinder 2 block, for example, we go ahead and remove the second bean canister. So again, we'll pull our green lever out all the way, go ahead and lift up on the canister, and we'll take bean canister out. And then we can reach in and just pull up on the grinder, and our grinder will come out just like that. So what we would do for a grinder block is we would dump all the beans out of the grinder, dump them into a trash can, shake it around, get everything out of there, and then we're going to take the spindle and then make sure it spins both directions freely. If it does, then we've cleared out the stuck bean or rock or whatever was in there, and then we can go ahead and take the grinder and we'll set it back into the grinder housing like that. And then we can go ahead and take our funnel and we'll replace our funnel back onto the grinder. Once we get that put back, we'll go ahead and take our bean canister, slide our bean canister back on, and we'll relock the canister onto the grinder housing. One thing to be careful of is these funnels. They only fit in one position. If we remove the funnels on both grinders and we get them mixed up, for example, it will look something like this. So if we look at these funnels next to each other, one is actually longer than the other. And if we put the longer funnel on the left-hand grinder, then we'll see this funnel down here comes really close to the coax brew chamber. As the arm is rotating back and forth, it's going to actually hit this funnel and give us a home position error on the front panel. So again, if you see the funnels look, one looks longer than the other like this, then they're probably put in the wrong position. So we would just take these apart, remove the funnels, we'll go ahead and switch them back. The shorter funnel will go on the left and the longer funnel goes on the right. So when you look at the bottom of the funnels, they should look fairly level. While we have the back plate off, we can get at a few other things in here. So we've got our 3 powder motors. We can remove those. There's 2 screws that hold those onto the this bottom plate. The other thing we can get at is our grinder motors. To remove the grinder motors, there's going to be a single screw in the back corner of the motor housing. And if we remove one of our funnels, there's going to be a single screw located up underneath that we would loosen. And once we loosen this screw and remove the one in the back corner, then this motor assembly will move forward and slide out. And then if we need to get at this, the left grinder motor, again, we remove that funnel. Once this is out of the way, we'll have another screw in the back corner, and we'll have a screw in the front that we loosen, and then we can remove this grinder motor. If we need to remove this plate, we'll move both of these motors over, and then there's a single screw here on the right side, and then there's another screw over here on the left-hand side under the grinder 1 motor, and we can remove those 2 screws, and then this whole plate can be removed if we need to take the whole plate off. As we talked about when we were in the back of the machine, here's our gray ribbon cable coming through from the back side. Goes through here to get at our door assembly, we can go ahead and release our grounds door, open that up, and now we can see right here is where our USB port's going to be. So when we're going to load menus or recipes, images, change software, we would plug our USB stick into this outlet right here. If for some reason that doesn't work, or we need to actually get into the panel, then we will remove this one screw over here. And once we have that screw removed, we can go ahead and open our door up. And then if we need to actually get in here to work on it, we can go ahead and lift the door off the hinges and pull it right off. And now we can get into our door assembly. So once you've got your black panel removed, now you can see the whole door assembly. And we have our gray ribbon cable that comes in from the I/O board connecting to the control board. We'll have a wiring harness that connects to the bottom of the control board, and it goes out. We have a black wire that goes out to our door switch. We have a purple and white that will go down to our two cup sensors down here. We have a red and yellow, and those will go down underneath to our LEDs on our cup stands. And then on the right side we have a communication cable going from the control board to the display. We have a backlight cable which goes from the control board to the display. And then on the left hand side we have a brown ribbon cable that connects from the control board to the display, and that's for the touch control. And up on the top we have a connection going to our speaker. And then on the top of the metal plate that it's connected to, we have our two ground wires. One goes to the front of the door, and then the other ground wire connects over here to the side of the cabinet. If we need to remove this plate, we can take it off with, there's 4 screws, one here, here, down here, and over here. And then we can disconnect our harness, our gray ribbon cable, and our 2 ground wires, and we can take this whole plate assembly off if we need to replace a screen or replace a control board, something along those lines. So when we're zoomed into the control board, we have our USB connection right here. And then if you want to see if you're getting power to the control board, you'll have 3 little LED lights over here on the left hand side that you can look at. So when we turn the machine around, we'll see back in the back side we have a fan housing right here. We can remove that if we need to. The way that comes out, there are clips on the left and right side of the fan housing. So if you use your fingers and put pressure on one side of the housing, once you break that loose, then you can get the other side out. And then your fan comes out like this. You can unclip these clips right here. And then we can go ahead and replace our fan. And then to slide it back in, you want to be sure you be careful not to pinch the wires here. So you want to hold the wires up and slide that in. And you also want to make sure that you reconnect this outlet with the piece of tubing that's inside the case cabinet. And then lock that in. To remove the back panel and get at the pressure boiler system in the back, we take out these 2 screws in the upper left and upper right corners. Now once we have the 2 screws removed, we can go ahead and lay the panel down. And to get it around your water line, you can either disconnect your water line or you can lift up the panel. your water line over, and then you can set the panel down, and it'll catch on these two lips right here on the plate. Once we have the back panel down, now we can access the components inside the back of the Virtu. First thing we'll come to is the inlet valve. So our water connection is a 3/4 inch BSP connection, and that can be attached to a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch water line. If we want to take a look at the inlet valve, we can take these two outer screws off here and here. So once you have those two outer screws out, then you can lift the inlet valve up and pull it away from the cabinet a little bit, and then we can see what it looks like. The black inlet valves have 3 screws on each solenoid. You can actually remove those screws and clean them, or clean any scale or lime that builds up inside the inlet valve. And we have our wiring connected to the solenoids over here. And then on the other end where the water comes out, we've got our open boiler is at the bottom, and then our pressure boiler water line is at the top. So the bottom one, you can see, follows this gray tubing all the way up, and it goes to the inlet on the top of the open boiler tank. And then for our pressure boiler, we start here and we go to the first thing here is a pressure regulator. This is a factory set regulator. We set it between 0.8 and 0.9 bar pressure, which is 11 to 13 psi. And this is adjusted at the factory, so this isn't something you want to change in the field unless you have a pressure gauge or we've instructed you to make that change. From the pressure regulator, we follow the tubing up and we go into a flow meter. Flow meter is going to look just like this. And then inside the flow meter, we have a spinner that spins around with a magnet on it. And as that magnet comes across the sensor, it detects how many pulses of water have gone through the flow meter. There is an inlet and an outlet, so the water comes in through the bottom of the flow meter and it goes out through the top of the flow meter. So if you ever have to replace one of these, make sure you get your hose connections on the correct outlet or inlet. So we go from the flow meter out, and you'll see a piece of tubing right here. This is where we make our adjustments to the pressure regulator. So you really don't have to do anything with this. And then out of there, we follow it around, and this braided tubing goes into the front part of our pumps. We have dual pumps on the Virtu. They rotate back and forth. So as one pump is pushing water out, the other one's bringing water in, and they just keep going back and forth. And that supplies water, constant pressure, going into our pressure tank. Pumps will kick up the pressure, so we start at 11 to 13 psi, 0.8, 0.9 bar. The pumps will kick up to about 4 bar for coffee, and then somewhere between 9 and 10 bar for espresso. If we can look at the bottom of the pressure boiler down here, we'll see an elbow where the water comes in. This is something you want to keep an eye on. As the machines age, scale will build up in that elbow and it'll slow the water flow down going into the tank. So you might have to remove that elbow and clean it out or descale the tank. And right above it, we have a couple of wires. These are ground wires connected to the tank. These ground wires work with the level sensor in the tank to detect when the pressure tank is full. If these wires are not connected or they get broken, then the tanks they'll start filling and they won't stop until the sensor is tripped inside the water bucket. So inside the tank, I'm going to pull this is the drain tube for the open boiler. You have a plug in it and a clip that holds the water in, so if you need to drain the open boiler, that's what this is for. And then we usually tuck it away over here on the left hand side of the pressure tank housing. And then if we look on the pressure tank itself, we look right on the front here. This is a high limit clicks on. So just like on the open boiler, if the tank gets too hot, this button will pop out and it'll shut the heating element off. And if we need to reset it, we just come back here, push the button in, and if you hear a click, then it was tripped and it'll reset and start heating the water up again in the pressure tank. On the left hand side over here, this braided covering covers up two different sets of wires. One is a temperature sensor and one is a level sensor. If you ever have to replace one or both of these, you'll have to take the whole sensor out. It's a combined sensor, so you can't just replace one or the other. You have to replace them both at the same time. In the middle, connected to our high limit clicks on, is the heating element. It's welded into the tank. So if the heating element fails or shorts out, you'll have to replace the pressure tank. And then the water comes out from the right side of the tank over here out through this clear tubing, and then it goes into our manifold and our valve assembly that goes to the brew chamber. So it looks like this, so we can get an idea of what it does. So our water is going to come in right here. It's going to sit inside this manifold while the machine's not running. This is a two-way valve. This will be open, and on the other side of it is a 2-bar pressure valve. So as long as the pressure is not above 2 bar, this valve stays closed and we don't get any water going anywhere. When the machine starts up for the first time, it'll actually open. It'll be above 2 bar pressure, so you'll see some water come out of the overflow, which are these gray wires, gray tubes here. These all go down into our center overflow, which is right down in here. When we're running a drink, this two-way valve is going to close. This three-way valve right here, the large one, is going to open, and it's going to let water out into our brew chamber. As the drink finishes, it's going to release some pressure back, and that pressure is going to go out the bottom of this three-way valve and again into our overflow. Once that pressure has been released, then the three-way valve is going to close. The two-way valve will open back up, and we'll be waiting for the next drink cycle. Also during the our safety valve, so if for some reason the pressure bar, this will open and it'll release pressure out. So we call our valve assembly, coax valve assembly. You can purchase this as a complete unit. You can also purchase the individual valves. And we have wiring goes to those solenoids on the valves. And on the overflows, if you look on the piece of tubing coming off of this plate, so right underneath the pressure tank, or the open boiler tank on the front, on the left hand side on the front. The one in the middle is for the coax valves. Left hand side in the back, this is coming from our overflow on our open boiler. Water bucket underneath the coax brewer. If the water gets up to and touches the sensors, it'll let the machine know that your water bucket is full, drip tray or waste bucket is full, error message will come up. We also have another one down here on the bottom. So there's the yellow wire is our water sensor that goes to our drip tray, and then the black and green wires are the wires detecting when the tray is installed. So we have this down here. What can happen with these, because of the proximity to the water, if water leaks back here and you get water inside one of these connectors, it can give you a false reading. So if you get a drip tray or waste bucket full error message and you're not sure what it is, you can come back here and just kind of blow these out, make sure they're dry, and then that should clear the error. We also have a micro switch, which is located back behind our pressure tank. And then there are two wires that connect to that micro switch as well. If you ever have to replace one of those, you can squeeze the clips and push the micro switch out through the front. And then it goes to the waste bucket. So also underneath our coax valves, we have the brewer motor right here. The plastic plate that's on the front of the machine, so if we need to replace this motor, we can remove that plate and push this out through the front of the machine after we disconnect our cables and our tubing back here, and then we can replace the motor if we need to do that. So now we can look at the electronics inside the machine. So our electronics in the back are covered up by this black cover plate, so we can remove that. And then we'll expose what we have back here. So we'll start with the power. And this plugs into a regular standard wall outlet. What you'll notice about these plugs is when you plug them in for the first time, they will actually make a click sound, and it'll sound like it's tripping, but it's not. So you just inside the machine to the front and turn the power switch on, and everything should be fine. If you ever need to replace the plug, you can actually, these 4 screws here on the front, you can take those off and you can put a new GFCI plug on there. From our power plug into, the power gets distributed from the connection block. These brown and blue wires here, they'll route all the way up to the front of the machine into the power switch. And then when you turn this rainbow colored block, the orange and yellow and blue, and it sends power back into the connection block. (120 volts into 24 volts DC on the other end. So the red and the black wires are 24 volts DC coming out, and that connects to our I/O board. So this is the power supply, then this large green board is the I/O or input output board. We have power coming in, and then all these wiring harnesses plugged into the board. These all connect to different pumps, valves, and things like that, sensors inside the machine. This one here at the end, this is for our decaf motor. And then over here on the end, we have our gray ribbon cable, which connects from the I/O board here all the way to the front of the machine to our control board on the door. Back here on this side, we have, again, 120 volts connecting to clips on the I/O board as well. This is for our heating elements. So if we have to troubleshoot anything on here, we would probably have you take a voltmeter, and then we would start tracking power. Do we have 110 volts, 120 volts coming in? Do we have 120 volts here? Do we have 24 volts coming out? 24 volts here, and so on. And then if we have to troubleshoot individual components, we might have you remove or unplug some of these connectors, and then we'll troubleshoot from there. So now we're going to cover the service menu. To get to the service menu on the Virtu, we can open the door. We'll close the door, and we can also use our green service key as well. We have on the main service menu, this is service level 0. You're going to see our quit button. We have a back button. We have a login. And then we have our daily rinse. We've got our weekly cleaning cycle. We have product counters you can look at. Software information. So if we click on that, we'll see our software information screen. And then if we need to reset the waste bin counter for the grounds bucket, we can hit the reset waste bin on the front panel here. So this is level 0. This is for what customers would need to access for the basic maintenance of the machine. Now if we want to get into a higher level access, we can go and click on the login button. And the highest level login is a level 4 access, so we can log in with 4 sixes. So 6, 6, 6, 6. And then down here we'll hit login. And that gets us into the recipe settings tab. This is where you can get in to make adjustments to the drink recipes. We don't recommend doing that on the screen. Normally we do these on the computer in the Movec editing program. There's a strength control. You increase the strength percentage. Milk and sugar available. Really don't use that much. Selection available. Yes, no. In gray, a list of our drinks that are on you. And then over to the right side, they're all set to yes. That means they're all available. If I wanted to turn off a drink, for example, like the dark coffee option here, I can click on the yes button. And then what will come up is green, is no. And now that it's set to no, that drink won't show up on the menu screen anymore. So it's a way to turn off certain drinks if you need to do that. We'll go ahead and set it back to yes. There we go. Calibrate valves. This would be if we need to calibrate the hot water valves coming out of the open boiler. What this tells us is if we run the calibration program, we should be getting 125 milliliters of water, which is about 4.2 ounces. So if we ask you to check your valve calibration, this is where you're going to go. And then when we click on these bottom ones, calibrate water 1 is our hot chocolate and milk topping valve. The calibrate water 2 is our vanilla or right mixer bowl. And then if we page down, calibrate hot water is going to be the hot water valve. And then at the very bottom we have number selection set to available. That means the number selection button at the bottom will be available to use. If you don't want it, you can turn it off by clicking on this and then setting it to not available. Next thing in the line is boiler temperature. So here we can check our settings and see our actual boiler temperature. So if we go into temperature settings, we can see they're set to 197 degrees Fahrenheit on both the pressure boiler and the open boiler. And if I go to show boiler temperature, this is showing me the actual temperature coming out of each of the boilers. So if I'm not sure if the machine is heating up, I can go here and check and watch, and these numbers should be climbing or getting close to our setting at 197. The other thing you'll notice is the pressure boiler system will actually go over the 197 mark by about 10 degrees, which is normal. So just be aware that that's what's happening there. If I need to change a temperature setting, if I go into the temperature setting and again click on the green, I can go ahead and clear this number out and then type in a new number and then hit save. Next thing in line is our cup sensors. This is where we can set the sensitivity of the cup sensors. So if you have a special kind of mug or a clear glass mug that you're trying to use, then you're going to want to contact us and we will walk you through the setup and how to make those adjustments. The main reason for this would be if you have a defective cup sensor. What you can do is go into cup sensor setting. If sensor 1 is defective or not working, you can actually change this amount from 100 to 0 and hit save. And at that point the cup sensor will be disabled and you can keep using the machine until you're able to get a new cup sensor. Languages we don't use. Images. This is where you can load different images. You can select from images on the machine and you can also delete those images. So you have what's called a user logo, which is going to be an icon that sits above the menu screen. You have standby images, which are your screensaver when the machine's not running. And then you have distribution images, which are images that'll run while the drink is being dispensed. And then you also have a background image that you can load as well behind the menu screen. Software configurations. This is where we load or save menus. We can select from a list. So if there's multiple menus on the screen, we can select from them. The one that is currently selected is the one that's going to be grayed out. We can delete them. Backup we don't use. Load configuration from USB and save configuration to USB. These two options are for the first one, load from USB. If you want to load a new recipe file that we send you or that you've created, that's how you do that. And then save configuration would be if you're trying to send us a recipe file or you're trying to save a recipe that's currently on the machine, you can use that. When you hit load or save, then you'll get an option that'll come up here that says device 0. That means your USB stick is detected. You click on device 0 and then it'll allow you to pick from the recipes that you want to load. And then we can page down, go into the next screen, clock and time settings. So the screensaver time, this is the amount of time in minutes that it takes before the screensaver or standby image or images start to display. The default is usually 5 minutes, but we've set this one down to 1 minute. Set correct time. Normally you don't have to do this because these are set at the factory. Select time zone. This would be something you'd want to do if you're in a different time zone. Our machines are built in the Eastern time zone, so that's the way they're sent out. And then if you want to switch to your time zone, you've got option here called America, and then inside of there you've got Chicago for Central, Denver is Mountain, Los Angeles is Pacific time, and then it's defaulted to New York for the Eastern time zone. And then underneath that we have change scheduler actions. These are optional features that you can turn on and off in the machine. You have an energy save mode where it'll drop the boiler temperature 30 degrees and then after at a specific time you can have it start the machine back up and heat the boiler back up. Machine block will stop the machine from being able to be used, so it'll stay on and heat it up, and the screensavers will run. But when they go to try to use the machine, it won't let them get to the menus to run a drink until the clock has been changed or adjusted. There's some vending options. You can switch to free vend from a paid vend situation, or you can use a separate price list. There's 2 price lists in the vending options. Machine off will physically turn the machine off. So it powers everything down except for the board, the control board, and it stays on, and then when it's time to turn back on again, it'll power everything back up. And then you'll notice there's Energy Save 7 at the end here, so there's actually 7 Energy Save modes if you want to use all of those. Jug or craft settings. This is where you can turn the jug function on or off, as well as changing the number of cycles that are running into the carafe. Test outputs. This is where you can test components in the machine. Examples are the coax brewer motor, which will cycle the brew chamber back and forth. You can test the grinders. You can test the powder motors. We can test our mixers, our valves for the open boiler, and our pumps. Load permissions, we don't use that. Show error log. This is where you can see a breakdown of error messages that might be on the machine when you get there. If the customers are not able to tell you what's wrong, this is a good place to go check and see what it tells you. In here you might see a grinder block, mixer block, heating issues, things like that. Error settings. Really the only thing that we would show you in here is the reset cleaning error. What can happen is when the machine is doing a weekly cleaning cycle with a tablet and it gets interrupted for some reason, or the customer stops it early, then they'll get a message on the top up here that says cleaning error, and the machine will be basically locked up at that point. So you have to log in, go into your error settings, and then you want to hit reset cleaning error. You'll hear a beep, and then once you exit, quit back out to the menu, you can keep running. Water filter settings. So when you first get a machine and it's brand new, it'll say water filter installed with a question mark. So before you do anything after you've installed it, you want to go in here and you want to set it to no water filter installed. What that does is it starts a timer that will keep track of the brew cleaning cycles, and it'll also clear that water filter message. And because we said no water filter installed, it's not going to keep track of when to change your water filter. That's something you will have to do on your own. We have our payment settings. This is vending. Again, if we need to get into vending, we can cover this in more detail. And then these are options that are on the front panel. So our rinse cycle, our weekly cleaning cycle, our product counters, software information. The EVA DTS information, we don't use that here. Reset recipe counters would be if you want to set your counters back to 0. But again, keep in mind that's the only counter on the machine. So if you're trying to keep track of how old the machine is or how many vends it's been since it started, you won't have that ability if you reset those. Fan turn off delay is usually set to 2 minutes. And if you want to increase it, that'll keep the fan running longer after a drink. Normally it's 2 minutes after every drink. Change serial number. If we needed to switch a display assembly out, we want to usually match the internal serial number here with the sticker serial number that's on the machine itself, physical number. Empty pressure boilers. If we have a machine that we're going to leave outside for a long period of time in very cold, below freezing temperatures, we're going to want to empty our pressure boiler. But in most cases, if you're just going from shop to site or site to shop, you don't have to empty the pressure boiler, just the open boiler tank. Connectivity, this is if you're going to connect the Virtu to a network or to the internet, and then we can monitor, or you can monitor the machine through our Connect Me portal. Display settings, we don't use that. Reset waste bin, this is the same thing that's on the front door that'll reset the grounds counter. Change pin, here we can go in and set up a pin number. We can enter a pin number in here, and then if you exit to the menu, you'll get a keypad that comes up, and if you don't have the pin code to get into it, you can't get a drink off the machine. Change menu. So here we have the ability to change the drink names on the machine. For example, if we want to go into our coffee menu and we want to rename the light coffee, which would be our left bean canister, we can go into the menu item name, click on the green part, and you'll get a keypad that comes up. We can clear the current name and then type in a new name for our left bean canister, whatever beans we have in there. Canister settings. This is set up to keep track of the product that's inside of the canisters in the Virtu. So if we want to activate this, we would go into, say, beans 1. We would have to calibrate the motor by using a scale and running some calibration on the machine, which will have us measure the coffee grounds that come out as well as the product that comes out, and we'll put those numbers into the machine, and then as it runs drinks, it keeps track of those amounts, and it'll tell you when your canister gets down to, in this case, 20% of the size of the canister, and it'll give you a message to fill that particular canister.